Welcome to All About Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. I'm your host, Christine Lee, taking a look at Bitcoin. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index is currently trading at 56,483, some change there. Bitcoin is trading pretty flat, down about 0.2%. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. Taking a look at our top stories, crypto software firm Block.One has launched a subsidiary, Bullish Global, with a $10 billion in funding backed by prominent investors, including Mike Novogratz and Peter Thiel. The new venture will be focused on the launch of a crypto exchange on the EOS blockchain, called Bullish, later this year. Another company with a Peter Thiel connection is also exploring Bitcoin, Palantir Technologies, which was co-founded by Thiel. They're accepting Bitcoin payments. During an earnings call Tuesday, CFO Dave Glazer saying the publicly traded software firm is thinking of investing in Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. And joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk news reporter Jamie Crawley in London. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thank you for having me, Christine. It's great to be here.
All right, Jamie. So you wrote that article on Block.One. Perhaps tell us a bit about Block.One and their plans with this $10 billion in funding.
Yeah, certainly. Well, as you mentioned, Christine, Block.One is the developer of the EOS.io blockchain, and this is seems to be the fruition, coming to fruition of the unleashing the treasure chest of Bitcoin that they raised back in 2018 when, courtesy of a $4.1 billion initial coin offering, ICO, remember them? And they've now launching a subsidiary, as you mentioned, Bullish Global, backed by $10 billion worth of funding, the majority of which is from their own Bitcoin holdings, which are worth around $9 billion. And the main venture of Bullish Global is this year will be to launch the Bullish crypto exchange, which will exist on the EOS blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, do we really need another crypto exchange? How will Bullish Global make things better or be different from what's already out there? And some people are even questioning why EOS, it's being built on that network.
It's an excellent question, Christine. On the one hand, there's always going to be appetite for exchanges. More people are coming into crypto, and as much as the centralized nature of a Coinbase, for example, might not quite meet with the original ethos of cryptocurrency, things that really matter to users are things like user experience, ease of access, customer support, etc. So those are the things that are still going to help drive adoption of cryptocurrency. So there's certainly a big enough pie to be shared around, where this might differentiate slightly from the other major players in this space, would be, as you mentioned, the fact that it exists on the EOS blockchain. So it is maybe offering a bit of a best of both worlds. It's almost centralized, decentralized finance.
Mm-hmm. I also noticed almost all the funding is from Block.One itself, $9.3 billion in Bitcoin dollars and EOS. So why even bother with the other investors?
It's another very good question. I think they're certainly serving an advisory capacity, and for EOS to Block.One rather to unleash something like this, they want to they need some big names behind them to give it the clout that it needs to sort of build out a share of the crypto exchange market, which, as you mentioned, is already pretty busy. So I think that the deep pockets of such investors and the weight of the names that they can attach to it, I think is obviously very important to them as well.
Right, it makes sense, and certainly before regulators, it could help. SEC Chair Gary Gensler spoke before Congress last week, asking for more clarity on crypto exchange regulations. How do you think this will play out for the crypto industry?
Well, it's very difficult to say still. As Gary Gensler mentioned, there's still a little bit of regulatory uncertainty. It's still quite a murky picture in the US. Largely because obviously regulation of this nature is occurring at state level, which whether or not it's suggested that he'd like a bit more federal oversight of it. That would remain to be seen, but it's going to remain a murky picture for the time being. What might drive some answer some of those questions is if it does become a more cohesive picture from one state to another, and the SEC can play some sort of role in that.
Yeah, a lot of people are also saying, we need greater regulatory clarity in this space so that crypto exchanges know what to do going forward, and that could actually improve innovation if these regulations are thought out in a very thoughtful manner. All right, so Block.One has some big investors. I mentioned, Numero's on the list, Mike Novogratz's Galaxy Digital, and Peter Thiel, who's the co-founder of PayPal, of course. And I found that interesting because Thiel recently said Bitcoin could be used as a weapon by the Chinese government to challenge the US dollar. So, perhaps that was a call to arms to get the US to be more of a leader in this space. But what do you make of Peter Thiel's involvement here?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? He's certainly something of always appeared as a bit of a mercurial character. He a lot got made of his comments about Bitcoin and the role it could play in China being able to overtake the dollar as or China rather able to overtake the US as the world's sort of center of gravity from an economic point of view. There's a bit of context there. This wasn't him saying this from a soapbox point of view. He was asked specifically, what are the challenges? And he mentioned a few of those things like the digital, the ERMB in China, the Chinese CBDC, and so on. I think your point is an astute one about it becoming maybe some sort of call to arms, which again linked to what we were talking before about the ECC. We know that China is way out in front of any other country when it comes to mining. So there are some things that the US might need to address from that point of view to show some signs, at least, that it's not going to give up on competing with China in this space as it grows.
Right. He also, I also mentioned Palantir Technologies earlier. It was also co-founded by Peter Thiel. They had their earnings call today. They are also dipping their toes into Bitcoin in more ways than one. Maybe you can touch a bit about that. It seems Peter Thiel is very much bullish in the crypto space.
Yes, indeed. Palantir had the earnings call earlier today when CFO Dave Glazer announced that they were now accepting payment in Bitcoin, and hinted that there was a possibility that they would also open up a treasury position on cryptocurrency, holding it on their balance sheet. There's a few threads to this. On the one hand, there might be a sense of no news is bad news and crypto news is good news, because Palantir's stock price has been a bit of a rut over the last few months. I think it's more or less cut in half since the end of January. So into seeing some of the momentum behind other companies who are holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We know about Tesla. We know about MicroStrategy. So there's a possibility, at least that that they want to see gather some of that. So That's an interesting point. Peter Thiel has always been as I said, an interesting figure in this space, and he has been known to invest in a good number of the crypto-related startups.
Definitely. Jamie, we got to wrap it up, but thank you for joining us this afternoon and weighing in on the latest headlines.
Thank you.
All right, that was CoinDesk News reporter Jamie Crawley. Coming up, when will Bitcoin break out of the 50 to 60,000 range? BTC Markets analysis with Toroso Investments coming up.
We are witnessing the greatest paradigm shift in finance in modern history. Join thousands of newsmakers and influencers talking the future of money at Consensus by CoinDesk. A live virtual experience of leaders, changemakers, virtual reality meetups, keynotes from Ray Dalio, Gary Vaynerchuk, and much more. Get an up-close look at the boom in crypto, the surge of institutional investment in Bitcoin, NFT mania, the breakneck innovation in decentralized finance, and the coming disruption from central bank digital currencies. Join us May 24th to May 27th for Consensus by CoinDesk.
Welcome back. A new Bitcoin ETF application from Fidelity-linked Wise Origin is joining the growing list of applications awaiting SEC approval, now totaling 5. Analysts are optimistic that this is the year the United States will approve a Bitcoin ETF. Bloomberg citing crypto-friendly SEC Chair Gary Gensler and Canada's lead in the field as potential catalysts.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
So Bitcoin's short-term prospects are looking a little bleak, with blockchain data pointing to renewed selling by whales, that is, large investors with the ability to influence markets, writes CoinDesk's Omkar Godbole. In this chart, we see the number of whale entities represented in yellow, that is, clusters of wallet addresses held by a single network participant holding at least 1,000 Bitcoin, fell to a 5.5-month low on Monday, according to data provided by Glassnode. Delta Exchange CEO Pankaj Bellani telling CoinDesk the data looks bearish as it shows a clear trend of whales offloading their holdings. If we look back from October to February, the number of whale entities rose in lockstep with Bitcoin's price, validating the narrative that the rally over that period was the product of increased participation by large investors. Hence, the divergence between the two metrics is a cause for concern for the bulls. Bitcoin's price has been generally restricted to the 50 to 60,000 range since mid-March amid continued selling by whales. In other words, retail investors alone have been struggling to drive BT's rally. And joining us now to discuss is Toroso Investments Chief Investment Officer Michael Venuto. Welcome, Michael, to the show.
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. All right, so selling pressure from Bitcoin whales. Do you see a greater sell-off happening, or can retail investors keep the price up?
You know, when I look at that Glassnode chart, I see a glass half full here, right? The fact that the price has been relatively stable despite that many whales starting to exit a little bit is pretty amazing to me. And I always find this a double-edged sword, right? Everybody wants Bitcoin to be decentralized to really reach its dream. But then when it starts to decentralize more and some of the whales get out of the way, we get worried about price. This is always that double-edged sword with Bitcoin.
That's an interesting point. All right, so what's your outlook on Bitcoin for this summer? What metrics are informing you?
I mean, you know, with Block, which is the ETF that we run where we buy these blockchain-oriented companies, we're constantly looking at the hash rates. We're looking at what the miners are seeing in supply, what their revenues are. I know we were kind of joking about the ETF guy, right? So it's amazing to me that the entire ETF industry in the U.S. generates about $10 billion in revenue. The Bitcoin miners generate close to $25 billion in revenue at these 55-ish prices. So I'm really excited about seeing what's going on there. Even though the sentiment has been sucked out the last couple of days, I think Coinbase took a lot of love away from some of the other blockchain names, but I think it's all settling out and we're seeing price discovery, and I think it's a great time to be in this market.
Do you foresee a breakout this summer in higher territory, or do you have a price target for the end of the year?
Sure. So last time I was on the show, we did talk a little bit about Dogecoin, but more importantly, we threw out there the 100K target by year end, and I would still believe that's very, very, very likely. I think that there's just too much institutional interest. I think the glass nodes are going to go back up there because there's new whales coming, right? Whether it's Elon or Saylor or Mara or any of these companies that are getting involved, or maybe it's Zuckerberg and his new goat.
Right. Bitcoin next. All right. Toroso Investments is an ETF asset manager, as you mentioned. Wise Origin, which is backed by Fidelity, just filed a Bitcoin ETF. There are 5 awaiting SEC approval. When are we going to see a Bitcoin ETF in the U.S.?
So I've been the one person who says it's going to be longer, and it's looking more and more like I'm right here. Gensler, he's here, but it's not really the job of an ETF to verify an asset. And what's happened here is the ETF's gotten so much attention that at this point, if they just approve an ETF, it's like the government making a much larger statement about Bitcoin than it's intending to. So I think it's going to take, I would say best case scenario is late 2022. There's too many things to work out. And they know the anomaly here. They know the falsehood. They know that Bitcoin was created to let you bank yourself and get rid of the trusted third party. So the SEC is saying, why do you want us to stand in as your trusted third party?
That's interesting because a lot of people are saying, SEC Chair Gary Gensler is crypto friendly. He taught classes for cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology at MIT. Some think that this will escalate approval for a Bitcoin ETF. You don't think so?
I think it's going to escalate approval for the technologies around Bitcoin, the use of Bitcoin in other ways, but I don't think that they lead with an ETF. Why should that be the first thing that they deal with when it's about transparency in markets and all that sort of stuff? And look, I've been doing this a long time, and I've always said the only real threat to the ETF industry is blockchain traded funds in 5 or 10 years. They're more concerned with that than letting an ETF verify an asset, because it doesn't need it. All of us are out here buying these things. For today, there's, what we do is we buy the blockchain companies, the companies mining this stuff and expanding the chain.
Well, we are seeing decentralized exchanges as well as fractionalized stocks and all these new financial products. So they may have other fish to fry. Thank you, Michael, for joining us this afternoon.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Right, that was Toroso Investments Chief Investment Officer Michael Venuto. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in New York for First Mover, your first look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.